And that, as much as anything else, led to my drinking problem.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Workman, and I am the man of constant hatred, and welcome back to Heavy Drinking, the show where we dissect film series and the filmographies of certain directors. This month, we are doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1, and my guests this month are David Wray on my right.
Hey, everybody.
And Manny Classic.
What up?
So, as I said, we're doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1, which in order is Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America the First Avenger, and The Avengers. Let's start as we started last month by doing our favorite going in and our least favorite going in. David, go ahead and start us off on that.
Well, I'll start with the least favorite, which had to be Iron Man 2. Just had a lot of... We've discussed it numerous times off camera. It's just had too much going on, not enough cohesiveness to it, the recastings, everything else involved with it. My favorite going in was Captain America the First Avenger. Soup to nuts, I think it's the best film in the first phase.
Okay. Manny?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Iron Man 2, I think, is the worst movie in Phase 1 and the worst movie in all of Marvel's cinematic universe. So
I agree with that.
My favorite going in was Captain America First Avenger. I feel like he's the best character in terms of how he gets developed. We get a pretty clear origin story that leads to everything else that's going on. There's a few plot twists, especially if you're not paying attention to the TV universe that they were starting to build at the same time. Mm-hmm. So just a lot of great things happen in that film.
Yep. My least favorite going in, I guess I showed my hand already, was Iron Man 2. My favorite going in was The Avengers. I think it's an exciting film. I like a lot of things that go on in it. And we'll get into that a little bit more down the road. So let's go ahead and open up with some opening thoughts. Manny?
All right, so I guess outside of just talking about the movies, I feel like talking about the impact.
Yeah.
We'll start there, because realistically, it's a thing that we take for granted now in the fact that everyone's a comic book fan.
Right.
When these movies started coming out, it suddenly became real cool to show up at your local comic book shop. When 3 months before, I'd sit in a comic book shop with 5 guys playing D&D for 6 hours, and the only other person in the store is the owner, and guys picking up their boxes,
right.
you know. And then all of a sudden you get this huge influx because it became real cool. You weren't getting that in the 90s with the Batman movies. Mm-hmm. You really didn't get that with Spider-Man, with the Spider-Man trilogy, even though they opened up the world to comic book cinema and things like that. X-Men. There's a whole bunch of other comics that never got people into comic book shops that way. So I think it's just something we take for granted now, that you can show up to a comic book shop and people aren't just looking at you all fucking weird. But
yeah, I worked in a comic book shop for 2 years. The only reason I quit is because I moved from Virginia to Illinois, and there's a small mixed bag of people that come in and buy comics, but it's not a wide variety of human beings. It's a very select kind of people, and mostly 30-year-old males, 20-year-old males, and you know, that's fine, but suddenly it became safer for other people to like comic books. It became safer, especially for women, to start liking comic books, even if they enjoyed comic books beforehand, but were just kind of afraid of the atmosphere. It's nice that it can be more inclusive now, and I really enjoy that, because, you know, I have a lot of nerd friends from different walks of life that just don't really hit up comic book shops.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even in my everyday life, you know, now people actually actively engage me when they find out that I'm a nerd, and they don't do it in a derogatory way now,
right.
Because Iron Man, Captain America, Marvel, DC, these have become household names, almost on the same level as Star Wars with Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader. So now when somebody knows that you know this information, they're more willing to have a discussion about it too.
Yeah.
Versus just you're a nerd.
Yeah, it's harder for other people to pretend now that these things aren't cool. I mean, you know, when we were in middle school, high school, like it wasn't necessarily cool to read comics, even though the 90s were kind of a comics boom, so to speak, because they just started overprinting comics left and right because things like Death of Superman and Nightfall just became huge things.
Yeah, I mean, at one point we had, 7 different Spider-Man comics?
Yeah.
Spectacular, amazing.
And Wizard Magazine was kind of like, you know, the big thing in the 90s. So, you know, liking stuff like this and liking stuff like Star Wars was not going to get you a lot of street cred.
Now, I mean, movies like this and such like that have given way to what, you know, most people aren't. How many people actually watch The Big Bang Theory? Most nerds don't, but a lot of people do because that's what they've envisioned nerd culture to be.
Yeah, and it's real quippy nerd culture. It's not mom's basement nerd culture. So,
right.
Yeah, and I feel like overall, especially the MCU films, gave a lot of credit to comic book movies as critical darlings as well, because before this, you know, you're getting a lot of things like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, which are fun movies, but it's hard to call them good movies.
Yeah, bat nipples.
Yeah, or movies that are seen to be really great movies people don't know are comic books, big summer blockbusters, Men in Black and stuff like that. Jim Carrey's The Mask.
Oh yeah,
it's all based on a comic book, but nobody knew that at the time.
Yeah,
Blade's another prime example, which is, you know, now they're talking about making another television series, like either for the Disney streaming or for Netflix. Most people didn't know it was Marvel.
Yeah, I really kind of like that one series with Sticky Fingers playing Blade. That was kind of a good series.
Yeah,
you know, I think also the MCU got a lot of gravitas because of the names that they brought in. Mm-hmm. Now, they brought in some new people we hadn't really dealt with on a lot of things. Like, you know, I mean, Paul Bettany's great, but we never see him because he's just the voice of Jarvis. We don't see him until Age of Ultron. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the fact that we had, in this phase, we had Ed Norton and Robert Downey Jr., Jon Favreau, Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, let's start getting into the movies then. We'll you know, of course, we start in 2008 with Iron Man, so it's been 10 years.
That's right, 10 years.
You probably can't read David's shirt, but he's got the Marvel Studios 10 on there. So we start with Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau, who up to this point, I don't know, probably the most famous thing he had done at this point was his story arc on Friends as Monica's rich boyfriend that wants to be in the UFC.
PCU.
He was in PCU.
That's right.
But I'm saying what people would most recognize him for. What people would most recognize him for.
Don't be the dude who wears the band shirt to the band show. Don't be that guy. Solid advice from Jeremy Piven. The only solid advice he's given.
And then probably the biggest budget film he has helmed at this point was Zathura, which was, you know, kind of a spiritual sequel to Jumanji. A lot of people wrote it off. It's a phenomenal film. I talk about it all the time. I don't know if I've done it on this channel, but I'm going to start doing it more.
And he's never talked about it around me until now.
We talked about it once in a Drinking Age review. If we end up finding that, we'll probably link that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that movie's much better than the general public gives it credit for.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film. And I think it's either on Amazon or Netflix right now. So if you haven't seen Zathura, and I'm sure that's most of you, if you've stuck to the video this far in, see Zathura. It's fantastic. You can watch it for free right now. Do it. Just there's no point not to.
Yeah, Wilford Brumley.
So Iron Man came out, it actually, in the U.S. it came out May 2nd. But internationally, it was released April 30th, rather. So pretty much we're getting Infinity War exactly 10 years later.
Yeah.
And this is a huge blockbuster for Marvel. It's their first one that they self-funded, and they kind of took a big risk with such a small name in the comic book world as Iron Man, and they ended up grossing $585 million. So
nothing to cough at.
Yeah.
That's something else people take for granted, is the fact that Iron Man was pretty much a tertiary character through Marvel's lineup up until this point.
Yeah.
And they just decided, hey man, let's build this extended universe around this character that we have no idea if anyone's going to go see this film.
And in all honesty, they kind of make a joke about it in Age of Ultron, where Hill makes a comment to Stark.
Lab's all set up, boss.
Oh, actually, he's the boss. I just pay for everything and design everything and make everyone look cooler.
Because that's pretty much what Tony Stark was to the Avengers. He just paid for everything.
Yeah, they lived in Stark Tower. Jarvis, a physical human being in the comics. Of course, the Batman movies are going on at the same time. Dark Knight comes out the same year. You don't want everybody just going, oh, it's just Batman ripoff. So they make Jarvis a computer. But pretty much live in Stark Tower. Jarvis is serving everybody. He's the bankroller.
He is the money,
Yeah.
And to take this leap, I think, was both a big risk and a brilliant risk.
Yeah, and to take such a big leap on this character with that director and a star who, at pretty much at this point, has fallen out of favor. I mean, most people have forgotten about him at this point.
Yeah,
and those who remember him for buying hookers and doing drugs.
Yeah, and being an alcoholic, which, hey, it's Tony Stark.
Yeah, pretty much.
Marvel took a huge gamble. The script wasn't even finished when they began filming.
No.
So they were just like, yeah, who cares if anyone's going to go see this? We're going to do this, and if it fails, if it dies, it dies.
But I mean, John Favreau, Robert Downey Jr., they put so much into this. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. went and sat down with actual military people, like, what's it like to be in a convoy? What's it like to have a VIP around? So I actually can portray these things right, and those type of things. And then we get somebody who, like Paul Bettany, who's got a great his filmography into his own right. He has 2 hours worth of work, and we never see him.
Yeah, I mean,
he literally he's never seen the movie. He has no idea what the plot is or anything. He's recorded his lines for Iron Man, and he's never seen the movie.
From what I read, to this day, he hasn't seen this movie.
Yeah, he has no idea anything about it. But I mean, who else do we have in this movie? We've got Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, probably the weakest link.
Yeah, unfortunately, I said it during Royal Tenenbaums. I'm not a big Gwyneth Paltrow fan. She's one of those actresses that really, really kind of reaches a different level with better directors. And Jon Favreau's a great director, but he just didn't seem to draw that out of her. I don't know if it was
she tends to be very, very singular tone, unless, like you said, she's got a great director or just the perfect script.
Right. Because she's really good in Seven, and she's really good in Royal Tenenbaums. But other than that, I can't think of too much that I like her in, especially her Oscar-winning performance in Shakespeare in Love. Yeah.
We also have Terrence Howard, the first Colonel Rhodes.
That's right.
The better Colonel Rhodes.
Yeah,
That's also right.
I think we'll get more into that when we get to talking about Iron Man 2 with Don Cheadle.
Right, and it's not that I don't like Don Cheadle. I just think Terrence Howard is an amazing actor. I really liked him in Hustle and Flow. I love him on Empire. Everything he's been in, he's just phenomenal in.
See, I don't have cable, so I've seen bits and pieces of Empire. Typically when I go to my parents' house, and they're thoroughly hooked. So
yeah, I've heard great things, never watched an episode.
It's a really interesting kind of modernization of King Lear.
I'm always down for modern retellings of Shakespeare, including Romeo plus Juliet.
But he's fantastic in this film. He's real kind of gun shy and put upon, and it really works for him.
Yeah, and he still tries to be that military man. Like he doesn't want to put up with crap. He doesn't want to put up with Tony's crap.
Right.
He's forced to, pretty much. I am your liaison between the military and this, and for some reason I have to be around you. He says it on the plane, I'm
just your babysitter, and so, when you need your diaper change, thank you, let me know, and I'll get you a bottle, okay?
Hey!
Right.
Jeff Bridges is Obadiah Stane, the antagonist of this film.
Ah, yes, Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges.
Who delivers one of the best lines in the movie.
Yeah.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave! With a box of scraps!
I mean,
He's fantastic in this film.
He
I feel his character's kind of garbage. I mean, Obadiah Stane is a little bit better than they give him in this movie because they really just need him as that like obstacle to stand in the way. He gets a couple of decent scenes of menace, and thankfully it's Jeff Bridges, so he carries this as far as he can.
Yeah,
but his character's way too underwritten.
I would agree with that. You know, you get the quote unquote evil businessman mentality from Obadiah Stane, and you kind of get the hints of it early on with like the one time that they show him right after they say that Howard Stark passed away at the very opening credits. You've got this basketball-sized globe and Obadiah just towering over it and glaring at it.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's pretty much how his character was the entire movie, and that was Jeff Bridges. It wasn't so much what the character was.
Right.
And I think Jeff Bridges coming off a kind of lackluster performances years leading up to this. The last thing he had done that was probably noteworthy was Seabiscuit in 2003.
Which is a great film.
He does some voice work. He was in Surf's Up, that Penguin film, stuff like that.
Which is not a great
Yeah.
film.
So he kind of hits this career resurgence after this film because from there, 2 years later, we get January of Bridges, where he's in True Grit and Tron at the same time, playing three characters of the top two grossing films.
He's an R.I.P.D. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
That's like 3 years later, though. That's 3 years after that.
You know, you gotta get paid sometimes.
Yeah, see Bruce Willis. I don't need to see the script. Yeah, let's do it.
I love me some Jeff Bridges. He ultimately wins his Academy Award finally. He wins it for Crazy Heart, which is ultimately kind of a forgettable film, but it's one of those, hey, we forgot to give you an Oscar for every other fucking thing you did that was great.
So you're saying he has as many Oscars as Kobe Bryant?
He has the exact same amount of Oscars as Kobe Bryant. So does Gwyneth Paltrow at that. But Kobe Bryant has more Oscars than both Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr.
Which is a shame.
I'm actually looking forward to Jeff Bridges later this year. He's got Bad Times at the El Royale coming out later this year.
Yeah. Which, of course, we talked about in our look forward.
That's right.
Because
Kaylee
Spaney's in it.
I keep telling y'all. So that's a thing. Clark Gregg. We get Clark Gregg as Agent Coulson.
I'm Agent Phil Coulson with the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
Yep, this is our first Clark Gregg.
Yeah.
Yeah, who had almost a no-name part, and they realized his chemistry was so great that we got to keep Agent Coulson.
Yeah, thankfully they did a second Iron Man and more Agent Coulson.
Yeah.
Who he is good in every iteration of the MCU that he inhabits, even if those bits are not good themselves.
Yeah. Ultimately, Iron Man is the thread that holds the MCU together, at least up to where we're at now. We're going into Infinity War, but we'll get into them later with Black Widow and Clint Barton as Hawkeye. But those two and Clark Gregg, I kind of think, are the underwritten backbone, the underwritten thread that kind of holds everybody together and keeps everybody grounded. Because
mostly they make pretty decent audience surrogates, because even if they are really well trained, they're still human. Yeah. They're not super powered. They're not far and away like, a green rage monster, or a super soldier, or a super intelligent businessman.
Billionaire.
Yeah.
The correct phrasing for is a billionaire, philanthropist, playboy genius.
There we go. So they make good audience surrogates because they can just kind of blend in and show you the world from a different perspective.
So we've got Iron Man, who apparently script polishing was done by J.J. Abrams, which is pretty impressive considering there was no finished script when they started filming.
Yeah.
But we've got a solid start to Phase 1. I mean, I think people went into this film going, well, it's a superhero movie, and came out of that film going, that was really something.
Yeah, I mean, it still hits a lot of those superhero beats that a lot of films before this kind of hit, but it does them in such a fun, refreshing way. And Robert Downey Jr. is pretty much perfectly cast as Tony Stark. And if I go back 10 years and still be excited about Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark, I would, because
you could still be excited. He's amazing as Tony Stark. The problem is they've put him in
He's
7, 8 movies.
Yeah, he's in the MCU too much and takes up way too much of other people's movies.
Talk about this in context of history, because there's some historic things that happen in this film because of this film. This is the last film that Stan Winston completes before his death. As some of you may know, Stan Winston, visual effects artist extraordinaire.
Stan Winston is practically a god. You get Aliens, the second Alien film, because of him. Predators created by him. The dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are pretty much all Stan Winston when they're not CGI, which we're going to be talking about Jurassic Park at some point because that series is great.
We have a heavy drinking later this year.
Yeah, we do.
So be on the lookout for that.
Yep.
We've got whatever they've called Jurassic Park World 45.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
There you go. Yeah, so Stan Winston is
Stan Winston. Yeah.
just amazing. He's done so much for film, and this is a really good last film for the filmography.
So we talked on Paul Bettany barely being part of this movie. The only reason he took this movie is because he did it as a favor to Jon Favreau for helping him complete Wimbledon in 2004.
Sam Neill was in that film. More Jurassic Park for you.
Is this like a 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon situation?
I don't know. It's real funny too because the next film that comes up is Incredible Hulk, which comes out like a month later, and Paul Bettany's wife, Jennifer Connelly, the oh so beautiful Jennifer Connelly, the oh so shouldn't have been recast as Liv Tyler Jennifer Connelly, was Betty Ross in Ang Lee's Hulk in 2003.
That's right.
So before we jump to the big green rage monster, we also should mention that this is where we get you need to sit through the credits.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so let's go into that. Me and like 3 other people are sitting, me and my group and a couple other people are just sitting through the credits of Iron Man because it's opening night. We went to see the midnight show. And lo and behold, here's an Easter egg. And out pops Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, the Ultimates version. I was done.
Yeah, and the way the secrecy around that, the fact that they drove him onto the set, he got out of a car, did his scene, got back in, and they drove him off. So nobody ever saw him come on to set except for the people involved in shooting that one scene.
Right.
Is just phenomenal. And it kind of goes to that MCU secrecy that we've now come to both love and hate.
Yeah.
Because we still want to know where Clint Barton is in Infinity War.
the kind of weird secrecy where they'll just like scrub actors out of trailers.
Yeah.
Just to let you not know that they're fighting alongside the Avengers in Age of Ultron.
Yeah, or they'll CGI out an eye patch.
That's right.
I mean, I guess CGI out an eye patch is better than CGI out a mustache for an entire movie.
Hey.
But, we get that, and he kind of breaks the fourth wall by telling Iron Man or Tony Stark,
Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it
yet. Yeah, and it's a phenomenal scene that just kind of sets a new bar for so much because Hulk comes out a month later, and Hulk, I don't think too many people were real excited about, but suddenly Nick Fury steps out of the shadows, literally, and is like, hey, we're doing the Avengers Initiative. And suddenly, Incredible Hulk's a completely different film.
So Incredible Hulk drops June 13th, 2008, and it only grosses $263.4 million. So definitely a big drop from Iron Man. And I think that has to do with that it's following on the heels of an 2003 movie that just came out, too. I mean, 5 years.
It's coming off the fact that a lot of people mostly remember Hulk fondly from the show.
Yep, Lou Ferrigno.
And Bill Bixby playing David Banner. And then 2003 was only 5 years ago, and not a lot of people like that film. I feel like there's a lot of credit to that film that I don't feel people give to it properly because it's really well shot, it's really well done, and I like the editing on it. But there are some iffy things about it.
Right.
This film comes out, and if you didn't stick through the credits on Iron Man, you don't know to see this film, and it's only I keep saying, it's like a month later.
Yeah.
So if you didn't stick through the credits on Iron Man,
May 2nd in the U.S. to June 13th, so literally a month and a week and a half.
You're just missing out on some interesting world building, because I feel like the Hulk did some pretty good world building.
Well, and most people seem to think that this movie's after credits scene is Tony Stark in the bar with General Ross, and it's not. That's the end of the movie. Yeah. It's not the Easter egg at the end of the movie.
There is no Easter egg in this film.
Yeah.
And also, I think this movie's kind of hampered by the fact that you go from Jon Favreau, who's a really good director, to Louis Leterrier, who's just kind of a okay director. He's had a couple of decent films. He's had a couple of real stinkers. His most famous film, probably at this point, is The Transporter, which gets a lot of credit because Jason Statham was really on the rise, and Luc Besson has some really good films under his belt that people remember fondly.
And this is our second technical. It's our first Incredible Hulk in the MCU. It's our first Hulk. But it's the first recasting we see in 5 years. We get Ed Norton as Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
But I think, no offense to Mark Ruffalo, I think Ed Norton did a far better job as Banner.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that also goes to the writing.
And I also think it goes to the fact that Edward Norton is just a really, really, really good actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think he gets sold short by a lot of people.
I think he gets sold short because he's one of those actors that's like kind of hard to work with.
Which we mentioned in Heavy Drinking Westworld. We mentioned the fact that he's an actor's actor. Like, he goes in and he's very serious about what he's doing, and there's people who take the craft less seriously, and he gets annoyed by them because if I'm working so hard, why aren't you working so hard?
Yeah, I don't know how him and Robert Downey Jr. would have gotten along on set.
Yeah, which would have been unfortunate because I would have much rather have kept Edward Norton than Robert Downey Jr. Sorry, he's a really good Tony Stark, but Edward Norton's just...
No, he's not a really good Tony Stark. He is Tony Stark.
That's true. Yeah, but Edward Norton's Banner isn't so defeatist like Ruffalo's. He's a little more in control of his environment and the things he does. And even though you get that moment in the Avengers, which of course we'll bring up later, where he's like, I'm always angry, and he just turns into the Hulk. You don't get that through the rest of the movie with him.
We don't really get... It's just like a sudden turn almost.
Yeah.
It's his cool guy moment.
Yeah, but there was no explosions. So we get him. We get, as you mentioned before, Liv Tyler as Betsy Ross. We get William.
Terrible costume.
We get William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross, Thaddeus Ross.
Oscar winner William Hurt.
We get Tim Roth as Emil Blonsky.
And that's what I was gonna. That's why I was saving him for last.
Tim Roth is the MVP of life. So Tim Roth is fantastic in just about everything.
Just go look up his filmography and start watching. You will not disappoint yourself.
A lot of you may know him as Mr. Orange from Reservoir Dogs, or as the robber from the beginning and end of Pulp Fiction.
That's right.
Those are probably his two biggest roles, or he's on the show
Lie to Me.
The title always gets confused in my head with House of Lies, which is the Don Cheadle show on
where he plays Dr. Cal Lightman of the Lightman Institute.
There you go.
Which he's a better House than House because he's an asshole with a British accent, but he does it better than Hugh Laurie.
Also, Tim Roth is in Hateful Eight, which is another brilliant Tarantino film.
Indeed, he is, and he's also in 4 Rooms, which I'm sure a lot of you haven't seen. Again, we're just going to keep digging into the vaults here, and this is kind of why we started this channel, so we can just talk about whatever the hell we wanted to do.
Yep, absolutely.
So there's this film 4 Rooms, and it's 4 short films done by 4 different writer-directors who have written a piece about a different room in a hotel on one night, and Tim Roth is the connective tissue as a bellhop who's having to deal with all the insanity in each of these rooms. He is really good in all 4 of them. There is a film by Quentin Tarantino. It's the last film in there. There's Robert Rodriguez. And from what I've read, there was supposed to be a 5th film written and directed by Richard Linklater.
Baby, talk to me.
Oh, God, I wish that would have happened, because I love Richard Linklater.
Tim Roth also in the 2017 Twin Peaks series.
Is he?
Yeah, baby.
Oh, buddy.
You got
Showtime right now.
Do yourself a favor.
I've been meaning to jump on this because if you watched our Lost Highway review, I'm a huge David Lynch fan, and I just haven't got on this because I haven't had Showtime. But in like the last 2 months, I've gained Showtime, and I just haven't gotten on it because there's too much TV these days, guys. I don't know what to do anymore. I just finished watching Lost in Space.
So
real good.
as much as we're having a love affair with Tim Roth, I think we should kind of get back on track with the Incredible Hulk as a whole.
You mean we're not doing heavy drinking Tim Roth?
Yeah, let's
save that for
let's
another
talk
time.
more about Tim Blake Nelson.
Let's talk more about as the other Samuel Stearns.
That's right.
Such a good setup for nothing to happen.
Yeah, that's that. Well, Marvel has pretty much said they're not going to do another standalone Hulk movie.
Yeah, essentially because of all the rights issues. But that doesn't mean you can't bring the other in somewhere, and it doesn't mean you can't bring Emil Blonsky back so we can get more Tim Roth.
Yeah, well, and he's not the other. Actually, he's supposed to be the leader, isn't he?
The leader. The other was
Yeah.
I mean, and in all honesty, we can get another Hulk movie. That'd be fine. Just we'll settle for Jennifer Connelly being recast again as
Please bring
Betty Ross.
Please bring Jennifer Connelly back, or just cast her as someone else because there's not enough Jennifer Connelly in this world.
I think unfortunately there's a few characters in this film that should be important that just aren't. Ty Burrell is Leonard, the psychiatrist. It's pretty prevalent throughout the comics, and
he's kind of the guy who helps Banner talk through himself.
Yeah, and he shows up in this movie and then never gets seen again.
But he does have a great line where he basically calls Thaddeus Ross on his bullshit. He says I make it's part of my job to know when people are lying to me, and I can tell right now that you're telling the biggest lie or something like that. We get Thunderbolt Ross, who's a major character in Marvel, but not done a lot with an MCU. When's the next time we see him? Civil War. Mm-hmm. So, what? Not 9 years later.
Yeah, just about.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, you would think that he would have had a part in Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Any of the other Iron Mans.
At least in Avengers, like something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could have easily seen him be one of the people that the Senate had called in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get homage to Lou Ferrigno, who gets 2 parts in this film.
Yeah, he gets the
security guard
and the voice of the Hulk.
Yeah. So just we get to keep playing with the history.
So the guy who runs the pizza shop that Ed Norton gets the pizza from,
Paul Soles.
Yep, who is the voice of Bruce Banner in the 1996 animated Hulk.
Oh,
66.
Oh, 66, excuse
1966.
me. Gosh, can't read tonight. Hashtag David is wrong.
All right, so from here we go to Iron Man 2, which we have all collectively said is our least favorite of the Phase 1, and Manny and I have agreed is the worst overall.
That's right.
A lot of recurring people and a lot of new faces.
Yeah, so you get Happy Hogan back, you get, of course, played by Jon Favreau, Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts, Iron Man, Tony Stark reprises, and then we get introduced to Black Widow.
Yeah, and we get Don Cheadle as the new James Rhodes.
That is right. So Don Cheadle has been recast, and I feel like the recasting hurt this film a little bit because you're 3 films in, and automatically you feel like you don't have any control over what's going on. So Don Cheadle, though he does do a good job, he's a completely different Rhodes.
So, yeah.
He's a little more take charge than Terrence Howard.
Which I think fits the character a little bit better.
Yeah, and I mean, it works more while you're setting up War Machine, which, of course, this film does. It just feels like the wheels are already coming off.
So this one came out May 7th, 2010, so 2 years later, pretty much to the day.
Yeah,
and
that first weekend of May is just kind of
and
like
we're right back.
now.
Yeah, we're right back up into the stratosphere with their money. They make $623.9 million in box office receipts from this movie. So they've pretty much almost tripled what Incredible Hulk did.
Yeah, now at this point, it's become kind of the thing you don't want to miss.
Yeah, everyone knows you're supposed to stay after the credits. Everyone knows.
Well, not everybody, because, jeez.
People know, they just don't do it, apparently. I don't know.
Yeah, because people are just jerks.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes more of a tentpole now, because Iron Man was kind of the bank, the thing that they were resting everything on Incredible Hulk was the follow-up that didn't do as well, and now the same director, the same actors returned. You get Mickey Rourke, who's pretty much fresh off of an Oscar nomination for The Wrestler in 2008.
Ooh, baby.
And we also get Clark Gregg back as Agent Coulson.
That is correct.
Yeah, and Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury.
That's right, because he's got his eye on him.
And technically Christine Everhart, who comes back or Leslie Bibb as Christine Everhart.
Yep.
Yep, working for Vanity Fair. And we cannot forget Sam Rockwell as
Justin Hammer.
That's right.
The Hammer Man.
I really wished when he came out for his presentation they had him come out to Hammer Time. That was me hoping.
Hammer, please don't hurt him.
We also get Scarlett Johansson making her debut as Black Widow / Natasha Romanoff / Natalie Rushman.
And I agree with Tony. I want one.
Gary Shandling?
Yes!
Oh, baby, as Senator Stern.
Okay, so here we go again with our film nerdery and whatnot. Gary Shandling is an amazing comedian. He's one of those comedians who everybody that you've ever liked in comedy pretty much ranks Gary Shandling as one of the top funniest comedians ever to walk the face of the earth. The Larry Sanders Show is a treasure. Watch the Larry Sanders Show.
He's got one of the best lines in the movie.
Yep.
Sorry. Funny how annoying a little prick can be, isn't it?
And I would not be surprised to learn that Gary Shandling is the one that wrote that line.
I would not be either. I mean,
as much improv has been let on to this and the first film.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I like is that I like the fact that Iron Man seems to be a little bit more loose with their script, which I think helps the characters.
I think so too, but I mean, there's something to be said for someone like the Coen brothers who run really tight ships and make just
absolutely
classic after classic.
But I think with characters who are known for being sarcastic and being the likable asshole, as Jon Favreau says, a little bit of leeway for Robert Downey Jr. and other actors work.
And to have such clever actors in roles like Gary Shandling, who another film, if you haven't seen, What Planet Are You From? Wonderful film about an alien that comes down to Earth to mate with human women. It stars him and Annette Bening. Mm-hmm. Brilliant film. If you're gonna put such small roles in their hands, let them run with it.
Absolutely. I would, in this film, I would pretty much, there's only 3 that I kind of would let run with ad-libbing, and that's Samuel L. Jackson, Robert Downey Jr., and of course...
I would not be the least bit surprised to learn that Don Cheadle is the greatest improviser of all time.
I wouldn't be either.
He's a really talented actor.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either, but just looking at it cast-wise, those are the 3 that stand out to me.
Also, just for the sake of knowing, we're taping right now on Sunday, which is Earth Day, so happy Don Cheadle Day.
That's right.
Captain Planet, he's our hero. He's going to take pollution down to 0.
That's right.
I won't do the rest of the song right now.
No, he won't.
I almost dressed as Hoggish Gridley one year for Halloween.
So we get Iron Man 2, which we all agree is kind of the weakest. Why is it the weakest in your opinion?
Let Manny roll in with some stuff.
Okay, so unfortunately the way that I see this is that we have 2 separate antagonists, and neither one of them stand directly up to Iron Man / Tony Stark. Justin Hammer is supposed to be the intellectual adversary, and he just kind of comes off as a quippy one-line guy who's not actually at all smart. So he's just, hey, I'm a dude that's got money, but I'm not as smart as you, so I don't know how to utilize it, and I don't know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, he pays to have ice cream or Italian ice cream flown to Monaco, which is closer to Italy. He has Italian ice cream flown to him from San Francisco.
Yeah, you shut the fuck up about Italian ice cream. There's no such thing. It's just called gelato. It's milk and eggs, bitch.
It's milk and eggs, bitch.
And then we have Mickey Rourke as Whiplash / Ivan Vanko. And as much as we talk about source material not needing to be directly a thing in terms of producing movies. The fact that they took about 4 or 5 different Iron Man characters to create this one character just didn't allow this character to breathe as an independent thing, and just it felt muddled.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, source material is not owed anything.
Yeah.
Even if, no matter what, it's not owed anything. I think the only thing that most source material is owed is that you at least make it entertaining.
Yeah. And
or at least kind of get some kind of approximation to the character, and don't just ruin a bunch of other characters.
If I walked into Iron Man and I got Steve Rogers as Iron Man, a Boy Scout Iron Man, I would not be impressed at all. I would hate that. But you guys are right with source material. It's kind of there to provide a foundation or a framework. It's kind of like a recipe. After you cook it enough times, you kind of know what goes in it, so you can play with it a little bit.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what source material is to me. It's a recipe that says, hey, as long as it tastes good, who cares what's in it?
Yeah. So for me, like my favorite one about this is The Shining, which I think is a brilliant film. It's nothing like the book.
No, and honestly, like, it's one of the few times where I feel they didn't even capture the spirit of the book, so it kind of ruined the film for me.
Yeah.
But I understand how well made The Shining is, and I understand why a lot of people like it. I'm just not a fan.
We talk about this a lot, me and you, off camera a lot.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of movies that we appreciate because we understand their significance or historic place.
Yeah.
And not necessarily what they were.
Right.
And The Shining is that.
My big thing about this film, especially, is I feel like it runs up to a lot of deeper issues and then backs away from them, whether that has to do a lot with studio interference or not. The fact is, there was a lot of studio interference in this film, and what they changed, I can only speculate on. But the fact that they start delving into Tony's alcoholism, they start delving into kind of his fear of death, where the same thing that is saving his life is ultimately killing him. So it drives him to alcoholism, and he doesn't really stay there. Like, he gets the happy Hollywood ending. Yay, I solved my problem. Now I don't need to drink anymore. I could just go back to recreational drinking instead of just heavy drinking.
Hey.
Roll credits. It's this idea that the studio obviously was kind of like, hey, John, we can't really have this character that we're trying to sell to children be a complete dickbag. So could you roll that back a little?
Correction. It's not character we're trying to sell to children be a complete dickbag. It's the toys we're trying to sell to children.
That's right. But I mean, essentially you want those toys to sell to children through the fact that this character should be someone they look up to. And you can't really look up to heavy alcoholic. Like, who, if we wanted to sell toys to children about heavy alcoholics, they could go see The Wrestler. Because that film's really good. I'd buy those toys.
It's real disappointing how bad Mickey Rourke's character was, especially after The Wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, he's having this huge career resurgence with Sin City, with this.
Yeah, with his performance in The Wrestler, and then when we saw him in The Wrestler and we saw Iron Man 2 starring Mickey Rourke, we were all like, oh, this is going to be great. And,
here's the poster children of second chances.
And what we got was an arc reactor on fire.
Yeah, essentially.
But the thing is that, like, these are studio things. The most distinctive parts of Whiplash as a character were Mickey Rourke's idea. The gold teeth, the cockatoo, speaking in Russian, because originally the script had no parts in Russian. He decided to learn Russian to speak half of these lines in Russian.
Because that's how dedicated that man is, even if he was terrible in Double Team.
Yeah. So the tattoos, he apparently went out, got a Russian translator in order to do these tattoos.
And
he still owns the cockatoo to this day.
Nice. And they're pretty much authentic Russian prison tattoos too. If you see the movie Eastern Promises,
that's exactly where my head went. I've seen that movie. I get that reference. I understand that reference.
Yeah, David Cronenberg, you're the best. Yeah, you see the movie Eastern Promises, they really go into the whole history of Russian prison tattoos. So when you see Mickey Rourke in this film, like, all of his prison tattoos look like Russian prison tattoos. He really put a lot of work and effort into this to just be another forgettable Marvel villain, because I'm sure it's been said 1,020,000 times on the internet, Marvel has a villain problem.
Yeah, matter of fact, one of the things that the film's producers pulled this was apparently one of his tattoos was supposed to be of Loki. And the producers realized, oh, that might not work. We shouldn't do that. And yeah, that makes sense. Now, if he was a Nordic bad guy, maybe. But yeah, it's just, again, I believe the correct phrase to lead into the next thing I was going to bring up is too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks.
Too many cooks.
Which, yeah, let's get into that, because too many cooks in this kitchen brought us the best cook in any kitchen in any film, and Chef.
Yeah, that's right. Chef Gaspar, which...
you guys are welcome for me setting that tea up for you.
Thank you.
So another YouTube channel me and Paul are really big on is Binging with Babish, who produces foods based on movies. And he has a tattoo on his arm that is the pasta fork from the movie Chef. So Favreau gets all this interference. Apparently the big part of interference was them adding entire subplots in order to put S.H.I.E.L.D. in the movie more.
If you attempt to leave or play any games, I will tase you and watch Super Nanny while you drool into the carpet. Okay?
I think I got it, yeah.
So there's a lot of interference, and he decides to write Chef, which is his homage to not only the restaurant industry, but also a thinly veiled shot at Marvel Studios.
Very thinly veiled.
He's eating it on one side from critics telling him he's not being inventive enough and that he was great 10 years ago, and he's not anymore. He's eating it from his restaurant owner who's telling him, no, you just play the favorites, and that's what the people are coming here for. Don't do anything new or inventive. They just want what they came for. Just Marvel just being like, hey man, we made a lot of money with Iron Man 1, so just remake that movie. So, Chef comes out and it becomes so successful they even do a Bollywood version, which I have yet to catch. I'm trying to get in on that.
Yeah, send us a copy if you have one.
But yeah.
Or just donate to our Patreon so we can actually do a movie review on it.
That's right, that's patreon.com/drinkingagemovies.
So, yeah, I think what you guys are talking about are the same reasons why I didn't care too much for Iron Man 2. Obviously, we get introduced to a lot of the great casts that continue to go on. Scarlett Johansson, Clark Gregg gets a return and everything. So we get that build. That was great. But overall, it was a very disjointed film. Like, who am I supposed to be hoping Tony beats up? Is it Justin or is it Mickey Rourke? Is it both?
It kind of goes into that territory where a lot of superhero sequels decide that they need more villains. Because
Spider-Man 3 is the best example of this.
Exactly.
The Sam Raimi trilogy.
Yeah. Batman and Robin's kind of a really good example too.
Yeah.
Because you have like 8 villains in that film. Like they just keep coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, but rather unfortunately they just throw them as henchmen to other villains.
Yeah. While
these guys are supposed to be separate villains.
Yeah. So anyway, it's this like more villains equals more danger. I don't know. It's a really weird thing that happens in like comic book movies in particular. And then you look at one of the best comic book sequels of all time, Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 has one villain. You get one storyline. Now, if Spider-Man 3 wouldn't have had the same interference that this film did, you maybe would have had Sandman and then Harry Osborn, which they've been building for 3 films, so it would have felt really organic to just have him in there. But unfortunately, he feels shoehorned in because the other shoehorned in character gets too much screen time, which is Venom. Mm-hmm. And the movie just suffers because of all the studio interference.
Yeah. So also with this movie, we get our first glimpse of the Tesseract in Howard Stark's notebook.
We get a recast Howard Stark with John Slattery from Mad Men, who's really good in this film. Even though in Iron Man 1 you don't hear Howard Stark speak, you just see him through pictures and like the flashback, the opening newspaper montage and all that.
So a couple other interesting pieces of trivia are that Hammer's building that we see is actually Elon Musk's SpaceX building.
Okay. Yeah.
And we get our post-credit scene that sets up Thor.
Yeah, which is essentially just a scene from Thor.
Yeah, which was directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
So this movie, and so far all the Iron Man movies have had a lot of Elon Musk in them. Musk is in this movie.
Yep, he does show up in this movie. Tony and him shake hands, talk about wanting to get together later on.
That's right.
And I want to say in the first movie, Tony's driving around in a Tesla Roadster, which hadn't started full production yet at the time the film was released.
So speaking of Thor, let's go into Thor, because I really enjoy that film.
I do too. I think it gets crapped on a lot by a lot of Marvel movie fans, not necessarily comic fans that understand the character.
Right.
I know when I went to go see the Phase 1 movies in their marathon form, it was Incredible Hulk and Thor that everyone cut out on.
Which is a real shame, because Iron Man 2 is in between those, so that's a better pee break.
So this one, again, comes out May 6th, 2011, and makes $449.3 million.
Okay.
And we get a brilliant director behind the camera on this with Kenneth Branagh.
Oscar nominee Kenneth Branagh, who has less Oscars than Kobe Bryant.
Now that is a travesty. So we get Idris Elba as Heimdall. We get Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Natalie Portman. We get Sir Anthony Hopkins as Odin. We get probably, and I'm going to say probably again, just like I said in the first cut, the most beloved villain in the MCU, Tom Hiddleston as Loki.
Yeah, we do. For better or for worse, we get him in this film. He's another one of those characters where I don't want to say that he's overutilized, because he's definitely not. He's only been in 4 films at this point. The 3 Thors and Avengers.
Yeah, and he's not really even a villain in Thor Ragnarok.
Right, but there's just that point in the second Thor where it's like, oh, Loki died, everybody's so sad. Oh wait, Loki's not dead. And then it kind of cheapens him for the rest of the run.
But he's the trickster god. He's supposed to do stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's such a good emotional crux in the second film. I'm getting way ahead of us.
We get our third weak leading lady. I mean, we've gotten Gwyneth Paltrow, we've gotten Liv Tyler, and now we get Natalie Portman, who just doesn't feel invested in the character.
She doesn't, and honestly, like, she said that the only reason she really jumped on board this film is because Branagh was directing, and she was like, that sounds weird enough to really enjoy, but she just doesn't. I don't know. She doesn't feel like she's all there, kind of like she was in episode 3. Not as bad, but right around there. To the point where it's like, you're such a good actress. Why didn't you just show up and do this? Just give it all. Also, her character's kind of weirdly written. Like,
yeah, she is. Like, she's supposed to be this strong, independent woman, but the moment Chris Hemsworth's shirt comes off, she's done.
Just drool all over the place.
Honestly,
hey, owe me a soda.
Honestly, out of what we have for the supporting cast around the main characters, I think that we get Kat Denning as Darcy, which I think she provides much needed comic relief in the scenes with Natalie Portman.
She is fine in this film, but she just completely jumps all the sharks in the second one.
Yeah, this one, like I said, she was much needed comic relief in the scene she was in. Like, they took my iPod. I just put like 230 songs on that.
Yeah. And
everyone else is worrying about years and decades of research, and she's worried about 230 songs on an iPod.
Yeah, she's pretty fantastic in this.
So of people worried about research, Stellan Skarsgård, who plays a pretty integral role on the TV series through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as Selvig. He becomes the crux, especially in kind of the end of Season 1, lead up to Season 2, in terms of the Inhumans and the Terrigen Mist and things like that. I always forget the younger son's name, the one who was just Pennywise. But he's in Deadpool 2 as a character.
Yeah, he sure is.
So that's a thing.
We also get Sif in the Warriors 3. We get Jamie Alexander.
Who's good in this, but again, I feel like she's again supposed to be this real strong female, and she's just pretty much, hey, look, this lady's wearing armor.
Yeah, now,
how quaint.
Now, is this weak female thing that we're running into in this first phase, is this a Marvel problem?
Oh, no. I completely put it on the filmmakers. I mean, the writers. It's nothing new. It's still a problem. It's especially in films like this where we should just have strong females. I feel like Scarlett Johansson was pretty good in Iron Man 2 as far as her characterization goes, but it's still kind of wishy-washy up to a point.
I can't think of a scene though where she was like the weak-willed female in the scene.
Oh no, definitely not. But I mean, she's still real subservient to S.H.I.E.L.D. She's still just kind of taking her orders. I guess, she's supposed to be a soldier, but
she's got a lot of red in her ledger.
Yeah,
she wants to wipe it out.
I completely put this on the writers and filmmakers because you have no female filmmakers up to this point. You have no female writers to this point, and they're just kind of following a lot of history of comics with damsels in distress. They're just following a lot of comic book films up to this point, because I mean, you look at like Kim Basinger in Batman 89's Vicky Vale. She's strong-willed, but she's still like most of the trouble for Batman because she's always getting captured. You look at Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. I mean, it's nothing new.
Nicole Kidman, Dr. Chase Meridian.
That's right.
So we also get our introduction to Clint Barton.
Yes, Hawkeye.
But yeah, so we've got Thor doing Thor things where as he pretty much is portrayed in true Norse mythology, he starts out as pretty much a giant jerk and looking for a fight. Yeah. Who can I piss off with my hammer today? And that gets him in trouble.
Yeah, and then it gets him banished. And apparently the scene where Sir Anthony Hopkins banishes him was completely improv by Sir Anthony Hopkins, to the point where he gave his performance so well, people on the set were crying. That man's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get Thor, we get Loki. Loki's up to his tricksters. He wants the throne. He tricks Thor into going to throw his hammer around. He gets Thor banished. He gets to be on the throne, and then he double crosses everybody who's helped him get to this point. Sends a giant mechanical death ray to the middle of New Mexico to destroy a city.
Which is a completely fabricated town just in the middle of a desert that Kenneth Branagh had built. So that's kind of amazing to me.
So, in the end, Thor wins the day, but he loses the girl. He's stuck up in Asgard. Loki is lost.
Yeah, he stuck up someone's Asgard.
Yeah. I don't think Sif was too happy about him pining over Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster. Sif, you can do better.
We didn't touch on Ray Stevenson.
We have not touched on Ray Stevenson from Rome.
Yeah, from Rome and from Punisher War Journal. Warzone. Sorry, War Journal is the
one
comic.
Of the comics, yeah. I believe Warzone was also one of the comics. He's had a lot of really weird titles over the year.
Yeah. So yeah, Ray Stevenson does some brilliant things. Back to the weak females, we get Renee Russo, who, unfortunately, most of this film is just kind of crying over the fact that Odin's in his Odin sleep, so...
Yeah, we get Asano as Hogan.
Which, I want to go back to Renee Russo, because Renee Russo came out of like a 6 or 7 year retirement for this film, and they just kind of relegate her to a background character.
Which is a shame, because, again, Marvel, when they first came out with these characters, Thor and Odin and everything, they tried to really emphasize the roles that they played in Norse mythology. So Freyja and everything, she was a strong female lead, and in this movie they don't give her that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also get our first Fandral, who gets later recast because we have Josh Dallas.
Josh Dallas, who goes on and gets cast in the terrible ABC show Once Upon a Time, the show that is completely ruined just about everything it's ever touched.
So there's a small bit of trivia here that almost changed the entire cinematic landscape. Mm-hmm. So we touched on me and Paul's mutual dislike of Stan Lee cameos. Stan Lee was almost cast as Odin, which means he wouldn't have had any cameos past this.
Right.
But eventually
they
settled on
I'm
Sir
really
Anthony
glad
Hopkins.
they didn't do that. Not because I want more Stan Lee cameos, but because I don't think Stan Lee as Odin would have been a good casting.
I mean, as a fourth wall break moment, it would have been cool, but like outside of that, he clearly isn't Sir Anthony Hopkins in terms of performance. It would have been fine. Odin probably would have got less scenes in the subsequent films, because I hate to say it, Stan Lee is breaking down pretty quick. It's a real shame what's happening to him.
Yeah, it really is. Stan Lee, I know it was kind of disparaging a little earlier, but you are owed your due. You are a fantastic writer, and I hate seeing the things that are transpiring with him right now.
Yeah.
So Thor wins the day, loses the girl, and we get
Selvig getting shown the Tesseract.
Selvig getting shown the Tesseract by Nick Fury, which gets a setup for Captain America.
And we also learn that Loki is somehow still about.
That is correct, because the last time we see him, he is dropping off into nothing.
So we get to see him basically cause Selvig to parrot words.
Yeah. So he's warping Selvig's mind. We're not sure how. Though it is kind of changed when we get around to it. We'll get back to that in a moment. And a post-credit scene, he's shown the Tesseract, and this post-credit scene was directed by Joss Whedon. This is the first post-credit scene that isn't part of another movie that was directed by a director for a later film. Which is just a little bit of interesting trivia.
Yeah. So now we get Capsicle.
So we get into Captain America, the first Avenger. I almost said Winter Soldier, but I did not.
This one actually came out later than most movies. It came out in July 22nd, 2011.
Because you want Captain America to come out as close to America's birthday.
That's also That's also Steve Rogers' birthday is July 4th. So my question is, why didn't it come out on July 4th? So it comes out end of July, and it makes only 370.6, which I think is a crime, really, because this is one of the best. To me, it's one of the best in the entire MCU. We get an origin story that, while it is an origin story, is a well-told story.
Yeah.
We don't get the, I got bit by a radioactive spider for the 900th time. And that takes half a movie to set up.
That's right.
We pretty much get right into Steve Rogers being Captain America pretty early on in this film. I mean, it's seen, at least pacing-wise, feel-wise. It runs a little later as far as actual time.
Steve Rogers' transformation is more physical than a lot of other superheroes, as to where a lot of other superheroes' change has to be mental in order to get there. Steve Rogers already has that will to fight, that will to survive, that will to give. He's a man who knows what it's like to be picked on because he's so small. And he's a man who knows what it's like to be overseen. So he doesn't want other people to feel that way. And he wants to be the hero that he thinks he already is. So when he becomes Captain America, he just backs up his mental state with a more physical state to go with it.
Right.
So you don't have Tony Stark starting out as the complete douchebag, then almost dying, and then
becoming a likable asshole.
Yeah, becoming less of a douchebag, but still a douchebag. You don't have Thor starting out as a complete douchebag, getting banished and having to learn what it is to be selfless, and then being selfless.
Toward humility,
Yeah, so, most superheroes have to go through a mental state as well as a physical state. Steve Rogers just feels like Captain America right out the bat because he essentially is Captain America, just not the size of Captain America.
But he's still scrawny.
Yeah, there's a conversation between Stanley Tucci's Abraham Erskine and Steve Rogers, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to kill Nazis? Is this a test?" Well, yeah. No, I don't want to kill anyone. I just don't like bullies. I don't care where they come from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he even has a great line that Erskine overhears him say, scene before to Bucky where he talks about these men are going over there laying down their lives. What makes me that I have no right to not do anything different. I mean, that's his mentality the entire way.
Right.
And I think that's what makes him such a great character. But I also think that's what makes Chris Evans perfect for this role too.
Yeah, and Chris Evans coming out of so many other comic book films at this point. I mean, he's played the Human Torch in the 2 Fantastic Four films.
Mm-hmm.
He's played the IT guy from The Losers.
Yep.
He's played Lucas Lee in possibly one of the greatest films of all time.
That's right.
Hey,
Scott
look,
Pilgrim versus the World.
you guys remembered it this time.
Hey.
Look, that movie's phenomenal. That movie's real phenomenal. The only reason we didn't bring it up last time initially is because we forgot it came out the year before.
Yeah. I thought it was after this or the same year, but I was wrong.
So we get Chris Evans, we get Sebastian Stan as James Bucky Buchanan Barnes.
He's really good in this film.
Yeah, he is.
Luke Skywalker?
And we get Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter,
who goes on to continue to reprise the role in a short film and the other Captain America films, and wonderfully on her own show, which was too short-lived. Netflix, please bring back Peggy Carter.
Didn't that give us also like our 6th Howard Stark, the Peggy Carter series?
No. He's still the same Howard Stark from this film.
Okay.
Actually, Dominic Cooper.
Dominic Cooper.
Who would play Howard Stark in any flashback 40s stuff from this point on, because he plays him again in the short film and in
we also get Tommy Lee Jones as a hard-ass colonel, Chester Phillips.
Oscar winner Tommy Lee Jones.
That's right.
And then we have our villain, played by Hugo Weaving, playing the Red Skull.
Yeah, and Hugo Weaving is really good at villainous characters, at real menacing characters. I mean, he's, of course, great as Agent Smith, V for Vendetta.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really good actor, and it's a shame that he won't be moving forward, whether that's his choice or not. He was good. He was really good in this film.
And he really captured that. He was egomaniacal, obviously, but it was a controlled, very subdued. Like, I know what I'm doing, self-righteous. Like, he's basically the anti-Captain America, which is what made him the perfect villain for this film too. We also get our the Howling Commandos, Dum Dum Dugan and everything.
Neil McDonough.
Yeah, Neil McDonough.
Who get to be referenced a couple of times in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Mm-hmm. He's also in the Peggy Carter short film again. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if they show up in the Agent Carter show. They should have if they didn't, because Neil McDonough's great, but Neil McDonough's also wonderful as Damien Dark in the Arrowverse. I like him a lot in those.
So we get our classic hero origin. You know, we find out that Captain America is this scrawny kid from Brooklyn who's got a good heart, a good soul. Gets amped up on super soldier serum and Vita rays.
Yep.
And then he doesn't get to go fight a war. He gets to go sell bail bonds.
Yep.
Because Erskine gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh no, the super soldier serum's gone.
Yep. So he finally gets a chance to go to Europe, to the lines, and he's absolutely reviled by the men in uniform. Because he's just a showman. He's nobody. He's not out there risking his life like they want. And I think that was a big moment in the movie itself, too. Because you see Cap, he wants, like he says, we're all on the same side here, guys. He wants to increase their morale. He's doing what he's been told is the right answer.
Right.
And I think that also kind of sets up him in Winter Soldier and in Civil War, too. It's up to this point, he's done everything he's told as a good soldier.
Mm-hmm.
It's when he goes off script that things start getting done. When he finds out that this company that he's with most of their people have been killed or captured, and one of them is Bucky Barnes.
Yeah.
And so Peggy and him and Howard Stark go, and Cap jumps in there and rescues all of these people, the Howling Commandos, the French, everybody that's there. And it's at that moment that everyone realizes that he's better behind leading the charge than behind the lines, selling bail bonds. And we get to actually start to see him. We get the montage of him and the Howling Commandos blowing things up.
Right. And we also kind of skipped over the montage where he's selling bail bonds, and they continuously recreate the most famous Captain America cover from 1941 where he's punching out Hitler.
Yeah. Knocked out Hitler over 200 times.
200 times.
You know, we got that look of the Ultimates with the leather jacket and the helmet.
Oh, man, that might have been one of my favorite moments in this entire film. He just puts on that bomber jacket, and he's got the helmet on with the crest shield. That's not the circle shield because he doesn't have it yet.
Yep.
And he just jumps on a motorcycle. He's like, I'm gonna go fuck some shit up now.
Yeah, and we see that he still doesn't understand women shortly thereafter, because we get to see the wonderful Natalie Dormer make moves on him, and Peggy's not too happy about it. And then he gets his shield, because Peggy tests it out for him by shooting at him. So from there we get that montage, and we finally get Armin Zola captured.
Played by Toby Jones, who we haven't mentioned at this point.
Yep. Yeah, Toby Jones does wonderful as Armin Zola. So we're here with Captain America. We get to we finally get to see him face off against the Red Skull. He puts it in the water, which, you know, very emotional moment.
We've kind of skipped over. Sorry, I punched in on the montage bit, but at the end of the montage, they try to take over this train. It goes kind of awry, and Bucky is dumped into a ravine.
Bye-bye, Bucky.
Yeah, and at this point, if you've
read comics,
if you were a comic fan to begin with, there was always the rule: everybody dies, but everyone comes back except Bucky and Uncle Ben. Well, in about 2005, 2006, the Winter Soldier series comes out, written by the brilliant Ed Brubaker, who it revives Bucky as a Russian hitman who's, you know, kind of got a Cap-like origin. And you kind of see this getting set up because Bucky comes in as a grown man instead of the child sidekick that he was in the comics.
We see him first as Bucky in the comics in 1941, and then he dies, and we don't see him again as the Winter Soldier until 2005.
Yep. We continue on with Cap putting it in the water.
Yep, Cap puts it in the water. We get then we get this really interesting scene where they're trying to bring Cap gradually into the real world of 2011, and they choose a baseball game from 1941 that Captain America has apparently attended with his father, which, as you know, at this point Cap was an orphan who pretty much hung out with Bucky's family. Or his father passed in mustard gas, and his mother got hit with typhoid. So he's going to remember one of the last baseball games he goes to with his dad.
Yeah, essentially. And it's like, come on, you can't do just a little bit of research. This film takes place in like 1944, 1945. You could do some research to find a game from like when he was overseas.
Yeah.
So we get that, and that gets us to Fury telling him that he's been asleep for almost 70 years.
Him breaking out of this holding place in this fake little apartment that they're holding him in.
Yeah, which apparently is in a SHIELD building in New York City.
And he ends up in Times Square, which, you know, of course is pretty much the most iconic place that looks really modern that you can just throw someone into and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just surrounded by all this neon and huge billboards and fast-moving cars, and well, I guess it's Times Square. They're not moving that fast.
Yeah.
Just surrounded by the naked cowboy.
But we did not see in that scene, surprisingly.
I'm sure his fee would have been astronomical.
Probably.
They could have gotten Tony Stark to pay for it.
I was reading this thing. Apparently, he makes like $5,000 a day, $6,000 a day, just standing out there playing his guitar. Now he's got like licensing deals with like Fruit of the Loom because now he's not naked anymore. He wears a pair of underwear that has his logo on the back. Like, he's making money hand over fist.
But Underwear Cowboy just doesn't sound as good.
You know, it doesn't sound as good standing outside when it's like 6 degrees with the wind chill in Times Square.
Narp.
Yeah, I'll pass. Hard pass.
So yeah, so this brings us into modern day.
Yep, and we get to see him beating the crap out of
Heavy Bag.
Heavy Bag,
which again was a scene taken directly from the Avengers and directed by Joss Whedon.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get in the theater. We got the actual trailer for the Avengers.
That's right, which was actually on the Blu-ray still too.
Yes.
So we get our first look at Avengers, and everybody realizes at this point that it is 100% a reality. It's not just a theory anymore. We've been waiting for the team-ups of comic book characters across the board for years. The closest we came, film version, at this point, the closest to we came was one in Batman and Robin. Batman dropped Superman's name. Mm-hmm. He's like, you think Superman has to deal with this? And then in the movie I Am Legend with Will Smith, there's a billboard for the Superman Batman movie with the logos of the Superman Returns Superman and the Batman Begins Batman fused to look like the Superman Batman symbol from the comics.
Yep.
That's the closest we've come to this point. And now here's Avengers, and it's real, guys.
Yeah.
We've never seen anything like this. 2012 is just awash with promise.
And ironically, in 2012, it drops on May the 4th be with you.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I know you don't.
That sounds
and it
amazing.
makes, in the box office, $1.519 billion.
Now, is that domestic or worldwide? I believe
that's worldwide.
Okay.
It came out April 25th internationally and May 4th in the U.S., but worldwide box office, $1.5 billion.
We jump into Avengers. Like I said, this has not been done before. And we're all very excited about it.
Yeah. We're 4 years in now, and we have 6 movies, and we're getting the gang together. We're getting band back together.
Yeah.
Actually, we're just getting the band together. We're putting together a band.
Yeah, this is essentially, if we're going to keep talking about putting bands together, this is essentially the Traveling Wilburys coming together.
Hey, what a pull.
Yeah, right? I mean, come on. It's the best Beatle, Tom Petty, Bob Dylan, Roy Orbison, fucking Jeff Lynne, all in a band together.
So we actually don't even open with any of the big name superheroes. We open at a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility that's gotten in a little over their head.
Yeah, so this is the payoff of the Thor Easter egg with Selvig, and he's researching the Tesseract in this S.H.I.E.L.D. facility in kind of the middle of nowhere.
And the Tesseract begins misbehaving.
Yep, and so they call in Fury, and my favorite character in all of the MCU, Maria Hill, played wonderfully by Colby Smulders.
Yep, and this is where we first get Maria Hill.
That is correct. This is the first time you see Maria Hill. She is amazing, and Colby Smulders, you are the best.
She owns this role.
She owns my heart.
Don't let your wife find out.
She should know already.
So, yeah, so this situation's spiraling out of control, and Barton, who is not a scientist, who is not really doing any of this work or anything, makes the keen observation that they know the Tesseract is a gateway or a door, and Barton says, well, doors open from both sides. And as if on cue, the door opens, and in steps Loki, up to no good.
Loki.
And we get a pretty one-sided fight. And we get to see the power of Loki's scepter.
Yeah, so Loki comes in wielding the scepter, You've never seen it before. It's just got a glowing little rock in it, and at this point, it's just kind of a glowing rock because, if you're not,
Craig,
that is correct.
It's a MacGuffin.
So he turns it over to Mo. Mo. He hasn't been in a Marvel film yet. Why has Mike O'Malley not been in a Marvel film yet? Put him in a Marvel film. So it's just got this little piece of glowing rock. He touches people in the chest with it, takes over their minds, and just kind of makes them a drone. He does it to Selvig, and he does it to Hawkeye.
And he does it to a couple of other agents and stuff.
Loki escapes with the Tesseract and his little glowing scepter. He's got a couple of toadies in tow. And then everything explodes because explosions.
And we find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. has levels. And this is a level 7 incident.
Level 7 incident. So
and then we cut to...
We see some Clark Gregg.
Yeah, we cut to Iron Man. We cut to the first actual mention of life model decoys, which kind of plays in later in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yep. In a storyline that was so boring, I stopped watching that show because of it. After it followed up that really good Ghost Rider story too. That Ghost Rider story was fantastic.
So we get that, and we learn Coulson's first name.
Agent.
His first name is Phil.
No, his first name is Agent.
Well, I thank you very much for agreeing with Tony Stark, but apparently Pepper is convinced his first name is Phil.
If you look at his IMDb listing, the first word is Agent, his middle name is Phil.
Oh.
Actually, he's
Agent Maria Hill. Oh, I thought that was her first name. Oh, man, I was way mistaken.
So he's actually an APC.
That's right.
So he shows up and tells Tony he has homework and gives him pretty much all the background information on the Avengers program, which apparently Tony already had, but gets again. Just I don't really understand. Maybe it's more...
Yeah. Joss Whedon's not the greatest writer in the world, despite what a lot of people will say. He just kind of throws information at the wall and hopes some of it sticks sometimes.
Yeah, because, right before that, he says that, this is about... Pepper says this is about the Avengers Initiative, which I know nothing about. Well, obviously, maybe Tony only knew about it. Maybe it...
Well, literally, he's told about the Avengers Initiative in Iron Man. It's the button of the film.
Yeah.
It's the lasting impression.
And we have the thing at the end of Iron Man 2 where he signs up for consulting. So he probably knows enough, but he doesn't know the whole bag of tricks.
And then he's used as a consultant to... If we're going to delve into some of the short films that are come along with the Blu-rays, you get the short film The Consultant, where you find out he is turned on to Thunderbolt Ross to kind of turn him away from... the Avengers Initiative.
So we get that scene. We get Fury going to recruit Cap, which we saw at the end of Cap, and then we get Clark Gregg calling Agent Romanoff in Russia, and we get a really interesting scene because we get to see Natalia Romanoff. Black Widow.
Natasha,
yeah, Natalie Romanoff, Natasha Romanoff, whatever. She has so many names these days. We actually get to see her in an undercover spy mission. We don't see her as this.
She's tied to a chair to kind of try to subvert the damsel in distress. So someone's actively trying to do something about this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a great line from her. This idiot's telling me everything. And the guy's like, I'm not telling her anything.
I won't tell you anything.
and then we get Clark Gregg telling them that, look, put her on the phone or I'm just going to blow up the building before you make the lobby with some planes. And so we get an interesting little fight scene with how to get out of a chair when you're tied to it. Apparently you just do a forward flip and you can smash the chair and keep fighting.
Yeah, there you go.
And then we find out that there's a little bit of a disconnect between who exactly the big guy is. Because Black Widow thinks it's Stark, and Greg is referring to the big guy, the Hulk. And then we get this interesting scene with Banner and her.
The new Banner, played by Mark Ruffalo.
Yep, which is what I was going to say. And we get another recast with Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. And at that point, we've got everyone together but Thor.
And Hawkeye's under mind control.
Under the influence.
So he's gone doing Loki stuff. So Loki comes down and he's trying to find the location of some MacGuffin, and Barton's like, "Oh, it's in this place, and I need somebody's eye to get it." So he goes to Germany. Yeah, so he goes to Germany and he goes and rips out this guy's eye in kind of a disturbing sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he goes out into the middle of this
gala,
and
it's now out in
he's
the
like,
middle of the square.
Yeah, he's like, everybody needs to kneel to me. So everyone starts kneeling to him, and he's creating clones of himself all around. And then one German man stands up, and he's like, "Hey, I remember Nazis. Fuck Nazis." And he's like, "No, I'm way worse than Nazis." It's like, "Nah, you ain't. You ain't shit."
And then we get Cap showing up, and he says pretty much the exact same thing. You know, the last time I was in Germany, and somebody was saying he was above everyone, me and him didn't see eye to eye. And they have a quick little fight. We get some AC/DC.
Of course.
Some shoot to thrill plays as Iron Man shows up. And so Iron Man, after Captain America has beaten the crap out of Loki, helps Cap take Loki into custody. And then we get a thunderstorm, which means one thing and one thing only, according to Loki.
That's right.
And that means Thor. Which we also get a brief visit from Odin, too. Most people don't recognize, as we have Hunig and Munig flying around there, which are his ravens, watching his sons have a discussion on top of a rock.
That's right. Then we get some quippy one-liners from Iron Man, and then we do a really weird fight scene between the three of them.
Mm-hmm. Want me to put the hammer down?
And a fight scene that I'm really upset happens because if Iron Man gets hit by Mjolnir, he gonna die.
Yeah.
That's just the end of that. So way to overpower Iron Man in this movie, Joss Whedon.
Especially because earlier in Thor, we saw Thor just put his hammer on Loki, who is a god, and Loki's just like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Iron Man's just like, no, swap that away.
He's like, my power level's over 9,000!
He is.
Translation, it should have been 8,000.
He is Iron Man, though.
Yeah, and you can't. Once again, you got to sell them toys. You can't make Iron Man look that weak. But just know this: if Thor's gonna hit Iron Man with Mjolnir, Iron Man gonna die.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so he hits him with Mjolnir, and it does nothing. But Thor is strong enough to just grab his armor around his wrist and crush it with his bare hand.
That is correct.
This hammer's just like, you get the Power Ranger sparks.
I'm practically the heaviest thing in the universe.
Well, there's a difference between a single impact blow and sustained compression. As an engineering major, I can explain it to you mathematically.
Okay, as a dude who actually knows how the physics of Mjolnir works, it is created of a metal that is infinitely weighted because of the compression of photons within a supernova into a white dwarf. Real science behind that.
So what you're saying is when it impacted the Earth, it should have went straight through?
No. Technically speaking, what should have happened is the amount of weight should have intercepted and diverted our orbit. It wouldn't have went through because the compression of the Earth, but like it just would have shifted.
It would have destroyed the Earth either way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just
good job, Odin.
Just in a different way.
But yeah, so we get that. We get the quippy one-liners. We get another quippy one-liner. You get a mean swing, Point Break.
Yeah. So they finally kiss and make up. They take Loki back to the helicarrier, which in moments of Marvel Cinematic Universe that I nerded out the hardest, one of them was the introduction of Clint Barton in Thor, because I love me some Hawkeye, and the helicarrier taking off in Avengers. They're probably two of the biggest moments for me. Just just in the minutia of the universe. You expect to see the big things. It's the small things like a helicarrier taking off that you've never seen before on film. That really got me going.
Yeah. And one of the things that I liked about the follow-up to that scene is the next time they walk onto the bridge and Cap sees Fury, he pays him the $10 because he said they bet $10 that he wouldn't see anything that would surprise him.
Yeah.
So we get some quick discussion, some quick exposition on what exactly they're doing, what the Tesseract is, and thermonuclear astrophysics.
Right. And then you get the overly convoluted Dark Knight getting captured to initiate some much larger plan. Plotline with Loki. He gets out.
Which has one of Joss Whedon's favorite lines ever. Between Loki and Thor, where he gets the line "Mewling Gwyn past the censors."
That's right.
So shit goes awry. Avengers end up all over the place.
Sadly, we lose Phil Coulson until Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, Phil Coulson dies for a minute and a half.
Well, as far as we knew, he died a lot longer.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't long after this that we get the first trailer for
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we see him step out of a shadow, and he's like, "This is a level 8." Like, okay, you're dead.
How is this happening? And we spend the entire first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. going, how the hell does this happen?
Tahiti.
It's a magical place.
So Avengers end up everywhere, and then they have to come back together, and then they're up all night to get Loki.
Hey.
Always down for the Daft Punk reference.
That's right.
Yeah, and we get some really good banter between
Bruce Banter.
between Loki.
I ask you what ice cream called, they both say yes.
Between Loki and Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, we get that night in there where Tony Stark's just trying to delay him, but we get some nice quippy one-liners because they're both one-liners, guys.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of what Loki is. It's what Tony Stark is. So we get some back and forth. We get obviously I have an army. We have a Hulk.
We have a Hulk, which is one of my favorite lines because again, Hulk ranks up amongst my favorite comic book characters.
Without a doubt,
Even though he's poorly written in comics.
He is
often. Yeah, I feel like everybody gets at least some stints being poorly written because.
He is some more than others, though. Hulk is definitely more than others.
He's definitely one of those ones that's been mistreated so much that it's hard to recognize the Hulk anymore. I feel the same way about Superman. He's a great character that's not used properly.
But so we get that. And then we get our massive alien invasion. I'm sorry, we get the incident.
Or Battle in New York, as it's known in the film universe.
Yeah.
Because it's the incident in the Netflix universe.
Which takes place entirely in New York.
For anybody who's not up on Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, Defenders and Iron Fist and Punisher. Mm-hmm. Which is, Punisher's so good.
Yeah, I think we could just do a heavy drinking on the Netflix series.
Let's do that.
Yeah, let's please do that. We're going to pencil that in as a separate thing, maybe for the Patreon subscribers.
That's right.
Because we haven't dropped enough teases for what we can do for you on Patreon if you give us $10.
Patreon.com/drinking age movies.
So we get all of that. We get some more quippy one-liners. I'm bringing the party to you.
Right.
We get a great scene with Captain America and the New York Police Department, where Cap does what Cap does best. He takes charge of the situation and issues orders, and this cop is like, who the hell are you?
Yeah,
first off,
listen to you.
First off, how do you not know who Captain America is? Didn't you ever read a history book in your world? Because he would have been in the history books. I'm sorry. He's Captain America.
Okay, so dig this. Apparently there's this real great deleted scene that gets cut out, where during this whole invasion thing, Cap is wrecking these aliens, and there's this old guy with his grandson, and the old man is like, "Cap, is that you?" And Cap looks at this guy and he's wearing a veteran's pin from World War II. Cap gives him the salute, goes off fighting, and the grandson's like, "Do you know him?" And the old man's like, "We all know him." So,
I'm sorry, that scene shouldn't have been cut.
No, there's another scene that shouldn't have been cut. And, of course, that scene included a lot more Harry Dean Stanton in this film. And how you cut Harry Dean Stanton out of a film, I don't understand. Fuck you, Joss Whedon.
you know who we haven't talked about that is in this film? Alexis Denisoff as the other.
The other. God, see, there it was.
There it is.
There's where your other is.
All right, I was thinking of maybe trimming that down, but now I got to keep it in, so that makes more sense.
So he's another new character that's introduced in this film, along with Maria Hill. They're pretty much the two standouts that are added that are actually relevant.
We also
extras.
Yeah, we also get an extra whom I personally love, Ashley Johnson, from Critical Role and numerous video games.
I'm also a big fan of Ashley Johnson because she was Gretchen on the show Recess, and she was also the young Chrissy from the later seasons of Growing Pains.
She was also on The Blind Spot. She's the voice of Ellie in The Last of Us, which most video gamers know The Last of Us.
That's a really good game.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm not much of a gamer, and I like that game.
I mean, so she's... To see her in the MCU was a geek moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was for me, too, because like I said, I've always been a big fan of voiceover acting, and
I really hope that in August when I go to Gen Con I get a chance to meet her and the rest of the cast.
If you see David Wray at Gen Con, you can ask him for an autograph. You'll get an autograph directly from a member of the Drinking Age Movie Cast.
Yeah, I will be at Gen Con. The only thing I know for certain is 12 o'clock on Friday I will be at Matt Colville's Kickstarter talk. It's the only thing I have on my books so far since the event schedule just dropped.
That's right. Big into that, so.
Yeah, so essentially this film ends up completely changing the landscape.
Yep. And America learns about a new cuisine, shawarma.
I don't know if it's a new cuisine, but it definitely becomes
for most Americans.
I was gonna say it definitely becomes a fad after this.
Yeah, absolutely. We see shawarma shops everywhere.
There's even the Washington Nationals, who have quite an array of different eateries from different backgrounds in their concourse, have a shawarma stand.
I know there was one in Norfolk for a while. I don't know if it's still there. It's right there on 21st Street. You know, it was just one of those things. I mean, shawarma took off. They owe it all to Tony Stark.
Look, when me and another one of our friends went to Philadelphia for the Royal Rumble, there was a shawarma shop literally outside of our hotel.
So, we got that.
Which is nuts to think about because it's a ad-lib line. Originally, Robert Downey Jr. was supposed to come down after essentially getting blown up and just be like, "What's next?" But he thought it was boring, so he was like, "Hey, there's a shawarma place."
I have no idea what it was. But let's go there.
I really want a shawarma cooker too. Found one on Amazon. It's like $100. The vertical spit, and there's a restaurant in New York right now that you get to personalize your shawarma, and it comes in one of these shawarma cookies that they bring to the table.
Ooh.
Now that would be some damn fine meats.
Yeah. Also, for relatively close, you get Mexican tacos that typically
aren't tacos.
They're typically the same way. They got a pineapple on top, so that pineapple juice drips down as it's cooking and everything like that. Oh baby, let's do that.
Yeah, and then it leads to possibly my favorite in-credit sequence, which is them just eating shawarma silently,
looking exhausted.
Which
has one of my favorite trivia facts in it. Chris Evans has a beard in that, so they basically made like a half a prosthetic chin, and that's why he's sitting there like this the entire time, is just to hold it up and cover his beard.
His beard from another great comic book movie, I'm sure, Snowpiercer.
So the shawarma scene itself initially is only in the U.S. release. No other nation gets this at the end of the film. It's eventually added to the international Blu-ray and DVD release. So everyone in the United States is like, "Hey, you guys heard of shawarma?" The rest of the world's like, "Yeah, for years. Why? Did something happen to push it to you guys?" "Yeah, you see Avengers?" "Yeah, I did. It just didn't exist because we already know what shawarma is. So it's not a big deal.
So yeah, this comes out, changes the entire landscape of pretty much filmmaking in general.
And it ends with saying the Avengers will return.
Yeah.
Which is huge. We thought this was going to be an experiment, and they were going to be like, all right, we did it. We're done.
Yeah,
Your
high
turn.
fives, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And they went, no, we're going to keep going. And we find out things like Sebastian Stan has a 10-movie contract or something insane. So
he probably going to be capped soon. Because that happens in the comics.
Yeah. So, in the same way that Superman, after his death, gets Reign of the Supermen, where you get a bunch of people attempting to become the new Superman, you kind of get the same thing with Cap, where Falcon takes over at some point. Punisher takes over in what I think is Punisher's best-looking costume.
Yeah, it's real cool looking.
Of course, you get Bucky. You get a couple other pretenders that pretty much get one-shots of them just kind of rolling around.
We get
with
Jack
Cap
Flag,
powers.
who tries to take on the mantle, and he goes back to being Jack Flag.
Yeah, so essentially, this sets up so much with the success of the Avengers. What do you say?
1.5 billion.
1.5 billion. With that kind of success, everybody kind of looks at this and goes, "Why haven't we done this yet?" DC starts rushing a bunch of films because DC's never really known how to build a universe in film form.
Which is a sad thing, because I think their TV universe is great.
I think the Arrowverse,
the Arrowverse is amazing.
The Justice League shows that continuously bled into each other. The Batman animated series, which was great. The
Best
Superman,
Joker,
and it's
Mark Hamill,
and it's Superman counterpart with Tim Daly as Superman. The way they bled things together on TV for years is so good. It's just confusing how they weren't able to do this.
Yeah. DC's animated movie verse is brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yes. And
their
they,
live action, whatever they call it, the DCCCCCEU or whatever it is.
SCTV Part 2, I don't know. So the fact that they just continue to rush things, it's just so confusing to me. It's like, all right, you need to put more faith in your directors that aren't Zack Snyder, because Patty Jenkins doing Wonder Woman
was a brilliant film. Beautiful.
Just great. Such a good
It's
film.
the best of their live action films in terms of...
I mean, right now, if I were to take the deck and shuffle DC,
the only really good one.
But like to shuffle all the DC comic movies that have been out lately and the MCU, those two cinematic universes, and start ranking them, I mean, Wonder Woman's in my top 5 probably.
And it's a real shame that you have someone, a filmmaker as good as Ben Affleck under your belt, because Ben Affleck has made great films.
Ben Affleck has an Oscar, 2 of them.
Two.
One for Argo, which is a brilliant film.
Yeah,
so he
wanted a producing credit for Best Picture for Argo, and a writing credit. So both of his Oscars are from behind the camera, and yes, he has more
Oscars than Kobe Bryant.
So it's this real confusing point where you have a filmmaker that good, and Marvel's been known to do this as well with Edgar Wright on Ant-Man, and you just kind of shit all over him and just force him out completely. He just has no passion for the project anymore.
And you get bad things like, I'm sorry, there's a reason why the running joke is why did you say that name? There's a reason why that is. It's because that's the linchpin that brings them back together. I get it, but I don't get it considering the dedication. That movie had other flaws, but hey.
I'm going to throw this down right now. It's equally as bad as Agent Coulson being the linchpin for the Avengers to get back together in this movie, because he's connective tissue, sure, but he's not that character.
Well, and the way he's only connective tissue to truly is Thor and Iron Man. He's just met Banner. He just met
Captain America.
Don't get me wrong, he's obviously a huge Captain America fanboy.
Yeah, and for Captain America to be this heartbroken over this one guy, like all these people die on this ship that I'm sure he maybe talked to as well, and this one guy, because he's a named character, makes him this sad, is just kind of, it feels more like a Tony Stark trait than it would a Captain America trait. Because it's like, wow, this guy really liked me, and he was a big fan of Captain America. I'm really sad he's dead.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I feel like Coulson wasn't a good enough reason for the Avengers to be the glue of the Avengers.
Just to cohese together.
Well, he wasn't really the glue. He was just the push.
I mean, essentially, it's the same thing. He's the reason they all come together. And it's kind of silly because, I mean, you can have them get attacked on that level by Loki without having to force an emotional turn for them to
Yeah,
come
just
together.
the fact that they all together collectively got their ass whooped by Loki.
Yeah,
and outsmarted. Let's be honest, they got outsmarted by him too.
And the fact that he was able to tear through them pretty much so easily should, I don't want to say embarrass them, but it should make them realize the threat that he is without having to shoehorn an emotional crux to it. Because all these years later, it doesn't feel natural. It kind of lessened the film for me after watching it. But, I mean, it's still a really good film.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I had the emotional impact. Looking back on it now and everything, it's probably the reason why it isn't my favorite in Phase 1 is because of those miscues, those missteps. Like Thor going through Loki's illusion. Are you ever not going to fall for that? Well, obviously he does this to you a lot, Thor, and and it takes you 3 films, 3, before you realize not to do it.
Essentially, the success of this film, I feel, is the reason that Disney goes and buys Lucasfilm. They're like, hey, we can do this shit with Star Wars, too.
Yeah.
How exciting is that going to be? I mean, that's already billions of dollars in the making, and it's already got an entrenched fan base. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect reason why they did that. Why they're now why they went after Fox too. Because some of the Fox properties. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you get X-Men, you get Fantastic Four. They're coming back home, and then you get something like Die Hard, which has a pretty hardcore fan base.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean those fans die hard.
Hey.
So my hope with this is that since we've already introduced life model decoys and things like that, maybe we get a proper Doctor Doom. Hopefully as a standalone film, because Disney really likes, especially now, doing villain perspective films with them as the good
And
guy.
some of them have been some of them have been really well done. Maleficent was really well done. It wasn't amazing, but it was well done. It was well crafted.
And Doctor Doom, at his core, is a character that is the good guy. No one else understands that. In the comics, Doctor Doom is doing all this because he's been told by the Watcher that the Earth is going to be destroyed unless the Earth is under his rule. So the core of this character in the comic book is that he needs to rule the world or else everything's going to be destroyed without him being their savior, and no one else sees it that way because he's the only person that's got this vision. The best villains are always the one that you sympathize with, and you're like, holy shit, like, maybe this guy's the right guy.
I got one name for you, and it's Paul's name that makes him one of the best villains, and you don't sympathize with him. And his name is Joffrey Baratheon.
That's a completely different video that I don't want to get into right now because we're running kind of long right now, and I do love me some Joffrey Baratheon.
Okay, so back to Avengers here and kind of wrapping up. So part of the reason that this becomes a thing where we're now getting Phase 2, Phase 3, everything like that, is because Joss Whedon, who decided that Loki at his core should be a puppet to a higher servant. Prior to his kind of thoughts on this, Loki was just going to be the big bad, and that was going to be the end. And then he decided that he should work under someone bigger, and who's bigger than Thanos? And the studio was just like, that sounds good because we're making billions of dollars. Let's have a bigger villain.
Yeah.
So we've been teasing Thanos for
6-7
years.
I will give Joss Whedon a lot of credit on the fact that he had the balls to do something like that, because there's no telling that this is going to be the monster hit that it is. $1.5 billion, and he's like, hey, you're welcome. I just set up just 6 more years of fucking movies for you.
So if you look at the domestic, it's $623 million, which is more than Iron Man makes worldwide. It makes just here in the States, so
Yeah, it's literally at this point when Avengers drops across the world, it literally does what Hulk does and smashes box offices.
And I will say a lot of credit for that is also given to the fact that we are starting to ride the wave of 3D films at this point, because Avatar exploded in the stupidest way possible, because that film's real terrible, and it made 3D filmmaking just something that won't go away now.
Okay, so I hate 3D filmmaking. It's a stupid trend that we get about every fucking 20 years or so. Somebody's just like, we should do some cool shit with 3D.
Yeah, we've been riding it for 9 years now.
Yeah, I get it, you need to boost ticket sales, so let's charge an extra $3 to give you a doofy pair of glasses, but...
And unfortunately, films like this aren't shot for 3D. They're shot for 2D and then post-converted, and it always looks like crap.
Yeah.
There's 4 films that I credit for being good 3D films. Good 3D films, not cheesy, fun 3D films like Jaws 3D. or The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
That's a great film.
That is a
3D
great
or
film.
not.
Honestly, I love that film to death.
It's like about Taylor Lautner.
That's another film. That's another video.
That is another video. I'm really hoping for Machete 3 or Spy Kids 5 real soon, because I want to do that. And most of these films have gone on to be nominated for top Oscars or have won top Oscars, and because they just kind of revolutionized the way that you can use 3D, because they were made by great filmmakers. And though Joss Whedon is a good filmmaker, I don't think he's a great filmmaker. And he didn't shoot this in 3D. It's post-converted. The 3D looked like crap. And it's just okay.
But overall, I mean, at the end of the day, Phase 1 is responsible for so much of our cinematography the last 10 years as far as action movies.
Changed the entire, like I've said it like 3 times now, it's changed the entire landscape of filmmaking. It is responsible for so much that has happened in the last 6 years. And whether that's good or bad, that still kind of remains to be seen. Because there's always going to be bumps coming right out of things, because you're always going to get the copycats. But eventually, you might get something so worth the setup from this that not only will this stand the way it does as a really good series of films, but we might get something down the line that stands even better.
And for all we know, it might be coming later this week.
It might be. I really hope this film is good.
Because Age of Ultron was not fucking fight me.
I also don't like Civil War. So the 2 big team-up films since this movie have not been good. And Age of Ultron, again, is a lot of studio interference. And Civil War is down to the fact that
the story got gutted.
And we also start this trend after this film and the dealings they had with Joss Whedon and Edgar Wright, where we start turning more and more to TV directors who are used to kind of, I don't want to say being pushed around, because that's kind of a crappy thing to say, but
more used to taking direction from their financiers.
Yeah, because it is story making, it is storytelling by committee. Mm-hmm. All film, all television is that, because you have a writer's room. The writers are essentially in charge of how things get told, and the directors are just kind of told how they should point the camera and make things look pretty. And they also have to follow, like, you get a pilot episode that is the brainchild of somebody, that is the collaboration of a director and a writer, and that's got to set the tone. And as a director of TV, you have to follow that tone. So you get the Russo brothers, you get Alan Taylor, you get Peyton Reed. These are all fine directors, but they're TV directors, and that's what they're known for, and they're easy to just kind of tell what to do.
So, Phase 1, final thoughts? Again, like we keep saying, it set the stage. It did everything it was supposed to do. It started as a 4-year experiment, 5-year experiment.
08 to 12, yeah.
4-year experiment. Now we're at a 10-year experiment. Mm-hmm. That for the last 6, we've been teasing one villain, and we're just hoping it pays off. I'm excited about it, but really interested to see what happens. And Phase 1 was just, for me as a fan of Marvel growing up, and still a fan of Marvel, this was amazing. This has been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've mentioned a few times it cinematically changes a lot of everything from every facet of not just action films, but other TV properties, things like that, are building these universes in order to be able to push out their own products, their own stars, and everything like that, the way exactly they want to be created and shown off. The films at their core all make money. They're all multi-million dollars.
Yeah, I mean, even Incredible Hulk at $234 million, still that's nothing. That's not a bad break.
Eight figures is never anything to cough at.
Especially when you've got movies that are still coming out there getting hyped and are getting like $24 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Avengers, when it drops, becomes the 3rd highest grossing film of all time, which is a weird thing because the 2 above them are both directed by James Cameron in Avatar and Titanic.
I have my theories on how Avatar got there, but we'll do that later.
Unobtainium.
But yeah, the landscape is continually shifting and things like that, and Marvel, at least for the time being, is still tops in terms of universe building, in terms of quality of filmmaking for comic books. So,
and yet they don't have an Oscar, but DC does.
It's a makeup Oscar. Come on.
Yeah.
That beat Star Trek. I'm still upset about this.
Yeah, that is weird. I don't know how much I can add to that, but yeah, this is the cultural shift. This is essentially us going from cheesy comic book filmmaking to serious long form storytelling. Before this, I mean, pretty much the most serious thing you get out of comic book filmmaking in the 2000s is Nolan's Batman trilogy, which starts in 2005, so it predates this by 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then he runs his sequels up in 2008 against their opening 2 films, and in 2012 against their linchpin film. And as a longtime comic book fan, I've been reading comics since pretty much the late 80s, early 90s. And that's all thanks to my dad and my uncle, who were big nerds themselves. And to see this culmination of something I've been following as long-form storytelling pretty much the length of my life. I mean, it's just the early years that I can't read that I'm not following this. It felt good. It felt really good to see this happen. And I still love that this is happening. It's becoming a little oversaturated in recent years, but at the same time, it's still hard to look that gift horse in the mouth, because there's so much this has done to legitimize comic books, action filmmaking, fantasy filmmaking. The fact that they can keep releasing a film, 2 to 3 films every year, and one film is just a straight up action film, while the next one's a fantasy film, while the next one's a war film, and so on and so forth.
We get to the point where we have one that's pretty much a film that talks about societal issues.
Yeah,
with Black Panther. I mean,
I feel the last 3 films that they have made all belong in the top 5 films they've released so far. And what's it, 17, 18 films now?
Yeah. We're at like 18.
The last 3 films that they made belong in their top 5. That's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that's Black Panther, and that's Thor Ragnarok. And I think they're all some of the best examples of not only just comic book filmmaking, but of the specific genres that these films live in.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, Black Panther is a real socio-political, like, very Afrocentric driven film. It's Afrofuturism, and that's its own subgenre unto itself. Guardians of the Galaxy is space western, space opera, and Thor Ragnarok is just pure fantasy filmmaking. Like, they are tops of subgenres on subgenres, on top of just being great comic book filmmaking, on top of being great films.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Phase 2 gives you Winter Soldier, which I think is one of the best spy noirs in existence.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it up against just about anything in that subgenre. It's such a good film, and it's so well made, and the acting in it is just superb, and the fact that you could pull someone like Robert Redford into comic book films. Who ever thought you'd see Robert Redford in a comic book movie? Glenn Close has been in a comic book movie now. These are legitimate actors. I mean, sure, you get Jack Nicholson in Batman in '89, and you don't get much more legitimate than Jack Nicholson, especially in '89. I mean, this, for like the past 2 decades, this guy's just been top of his game, won 2 Oscars, then was in a comic book movie, then went on and won another one, because he's just the best. So anyway,
so since you brought him up, quickly a shout out, happy birthday to Jack Nicholson.
Happy birthday, Jack Nicholson.
Happy birthday.
We'll be dropping this probably next Monday, the Monday not following this recording, but the one after that. But we shot this on Jack Nicholson's birthday. So anyway, it felt good as a comic book reader, someone who had been watching comic book television or Saturday morning cartoons, the Adventures of Lois and Clark, the old Incredible Hulk series, the Batman 66. You know, I love comic books, and I love long form storytelling, and it felt almost like a validation of everything I had built my life towards at this point to have this happen. And I only wish it would have happened with DC first and better, because I'm a DC guy through and through in my heart. I think they have richer characters, and I think their characters are, most of Marvel's characters are rip-offs of DC anyway.
We're not going to get into that Marvel DC crap here, so, because that's going to be another video.
Do we have different films, favorite and least favorite, going out?
Mine actually stay the same. I got some shuffling around in the middle of the order, but no, my bottom is still Iron Man 2. My top is still Captain America, First Avenger. Just for the same reasons that I went into them. Iron Man 2 is kind of a dumpster fire in terms of where the ideas were pushed because studio interference, weak antagonist. Cap, I think, is a brilliant film that is the correct way to tell an origin story. Yeah, so that's where we're at.
Yeah, I exactly the same as Manny. My middle shifted just a little bit. And that's pretty much Incredible Hulk, Thor, Iron Man 2, like that little area shifted. But at the end of the day, Iron Man 2 stayed at the bottom of the list. Just, again, there's some great fun in Iron Man 2, but overall as a film, it's too weak to stand on its own.
I love the fact that his middle shifted a little bit, but he just named half the movies in the first phase.
Well, and the reason why that is because that 2 and 3 shifted as well, because Iron Man moved up above Avengers rewatching them. Iron Man is now my number 2 coming out.
I'm like both of you. My middle shifted a lot. Iron Man 2 stayed my least favorite film. Once again, it's the epitome of storytelling by committee going wrong. Its villains are just not strong enough to hold interest or to feel dangerous really at any point. Its themes, they run up on really interesting themes and then they run back on really interesting themes as fast as they run up on them, and it doesn't work in a lot of parts. It's definitely one of Gwyneth Paltrow's better performances. Her chemistry with Robert Downey Jr. in that film definitely outshines their chemistry in the first one, and will definitely outshine their chemistry in the third one or any subsequent films that she is in. It's just, I don't want to say it's necessarily a bad film, because there are good things about it. If I can sit and state a lot of positives about the Star Wars prequels, I can state a lot of positives about this film, because it's better than the Star Wars prequels. My top film changed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So now we're three guys sitting at a table whose top and bottom are all exactly the same.
That's right.
Captain America, First Avenger. I loved to death when I first saw it. I loved to death on different rewatches. There's something about my viewing on Avengers this time that just really broke a lot of things for me. There's something about Avengers that some of the plot points didn't make as much sense. I talked about Coulson earlier. The whole Loki...
The convoluted.
Yeah, that is so convoluted. It actually kind of shifted a little further down on the list for me. It didn't even drop to 2. It dropped a little bit lower than that.
The same thing happened for me. It went from 2 to 3. I mean, Iron Man.
Yeah, I think Thor jumped to my 2 on the Phase 1 rewatch. But Captain America is such a good film, and it's such a fun film. And it's one of those... I'd put it up with something like Where Eagles Dare, The Guns of Navarone, as one of those fun war action flicks that is just a good watch overall. It's a real cut and dry good versus evil. You know, you're not given better villains than Nazis most of the time.
I mean, Harrison Ford says it, Nazis. I hate these guys.
Yeah. Even
Even Chris Evans has tweeted, I'd punch a Nazi.
Yeah.
I mean, Captain America himself has said it, so...
Hashtag punch Nazis. It's a great film, and it also doesn't hurt that it's also directed by the director of one of my favorite comic book films of all time, The Rocketeer, which I don't think enough people talk about these days. That film's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Another really good action war film where Nazis are the villain. So Joe Johnston, keep punching them Nazis.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything you guys want to add?
Ashley Johnson's character's name is Beth.
Oh, in IMDb, she's just listed as waitress.
Apparently, she's wearing a name tag that has her name on it from the restaurant. It's Beth.
Ashley Johnson, keep doing good work.
Peter Criss going to be singing to her later. Beth, I hear you calling.
And on that note, good night.
Other small trivia, the comic book tie-ins, the hot dog cart from the fight scene at the end, same one that was in The Losers that Chris Evans hid behind. And the bridge in the main fight is the same bridge from I Am Legend where Will Smith is hung upside down.
I did know that. I actually, like, every time I watch that scene, I'm like, hey, it's the I Am Legend bridge.
Colby Smulders was not going to be in this film, but Allison Hannigan, friend from How I Met Your Mother, was like, hey, Josh, you should totally do this.
Wife of the other Alexis Denisoff.
That's right.
Mother of his children.
Yeah, that's a thing. So,
some comments down below. Let us know what you thought of all this. What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon for some notifications when we drop new videos. And if you're feeling generous, go ahead and stop by our Patreon at patreon.com. Is it /
Drinking Age Movie.
I'd like to thank David Wray and good old Manny Classic for stopping by and discussing Avengers with me for over 2 hours. And I also like to thank you if you stuck around and watched all this, because we really enjoy talking.
Mm-hmm. And we really enjoy having views.
And as always, have a damn fine day.
Lucky's playing tricks again! Lucky's playing tricks again! Lucky's playing tricks again!